Hello and welcome to a new video. In this video, I'm going to be covering itemization. And one of the main mistakes I see from bronze all the way up to low diamond elo is people building the same exact items in the same exact order every single game. And this is extremely inefficient and not how the game was meant to be played. With so many items in the shop, it can be confusing how itemization works, but in this guide, I'm going to be covering everything you need to know about basic itemization, how to itemize against enemy team comps, and also how to play your champion to the maximum efficiency by buying the right items at the right time. And I know a lot of people don't consider itemization as an important concept, but every single high elo player that you see will apply this concept in their games, and there's a reason why they are in high elo, and it's because they can maximize the items that they buy and really maximize their damage output and the amount of damage they can take every game, and that's going to make your champion a lot stronger. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first concept that I want to cover is going to be how items work in general. So the fundamental of items are built off of two types of damage. There's going to be AD damage and AP. AD stands for attack damage, and attack damage are items that will increase the amount of damage that your auto attack does. Some champions that use AD are going to be some of the Baron laners that are using melee auto attacks to deal their damage, or in the bot lane where you have marksmen who are using their auto attacks to deal majority of their damage. Next up, we have AP or ability power. Champions that get their damage from ability power are using their skills to deal majority of their damage. A lot of ability power champions come from the mid lane, as in control mages, as well as enchanter supports also will use ability power as their main source of damage. So why does this matter at all? The biggest use in itemization is going to be itemizing against enemy team comps, and this means if they are AD and they get the most of their damage from attack damage, you want to be building items with more armor, and this includes ninja tabbies or something like Dead Man's Plate that also provides armor. On the other hand, if most of their damage comes from AP, then you're going to be building MR or magic resist to mitigate some of the damage that comes from their abilities. This means building items like Spirit Visage or buying Mercury Treads, which are going to reduce the damage on the enemy team. So before the game even starts, you should be thinking about what damage is coming from the enemy team. And currently in the current meta, there is a lot of full AD teams being played on the enemy team, but still sometimes when I'm smurfing, I see my teammates not building the right items, and this causes their champions to be a lot weaker against those types of damage. So the first type of itemization that you really need to consider is itemizing against the enemy team comp and really seeing what the enemy team is building and what items you should build in a response. Now, what do you do if you're playing a carry champion and the enemy team is building armor or magic resist against you? There are such thing called armor penetration or magic penetration, which is extremely effective against this. So in the late game, for example, if you are playing a control mage and you see a ton of the enemy champions building magic resist against you, then you can build an item like Void Staff, which gives magic penetration and which will ignore 40% of the magic resist that they have. And this is an extremely effective item if you see the enemies building this. An item like Void Staffs are considered a situational item, which means that you're going to be building these items in certain situations. And you should always have these types of items in your build, and you should always consider these types of items while you are playing the game. So one example of this I see a lot, and people not changing their items, is going to be in the default builds. Now, a lot of the default builds contain an item called Morlanomicon. As some of you guys know, Morlanomicon applies Grievous Wounds. Now, what does this mean? Grievous Wounds reduce the enemy healing. And the thing about this item is it's included in a lot of default builds, but some enemy team comps have very little to no healing at all. And building this item is going to be extremely inefficient, and a different AP item will help you a ton more. And other times I see enemy team comps with tons of healing and tons of vamp, but no one builds this item. And the reason why is people don't know how to itemize properly. And if you build this item, you're going to mitigate a lot of the enemy healing. So if they have someone like Fiora or Dr. Mundo or someone like Sona, who likes to heal up their entire enemy team, and if you build Morlanomicon as a support or as a mid lane control mage, that's going to help your team out a ton. The AD counterpart to this item is going to be Mortal Reminder. However, if you're playing ADC and you don't want to drop a ton of gold on this item, you can buy the smaller version, Executioner Calling, and then build it into Mortal Reminder later into the game when you want to complete your build. So that's also something that you really need to consider. If the enemy team has a ton of healing like Soraka, or if they have a healing tank or frontliner, then you want to be considering buying this item. However, if it's included in your default build, you need to keep in mind if the enemy team does not have any healing or very little healing, then you can buy a much more efficient item. And I'm not going to cover every single item in this guide. However, it's something that you really need to consider when you are building your items. Now, in the beginning, I said people are building the same items in the same order, and that is not particularly bad. However, it's not playing the champion to the maximum efficiency. So that's what I'm going to be covering now. So some items should be built every single game, such as Akali's Hextech Gunblade, which is an iconic item for Akali. So these types of items are called core items and should be built every single game because they work super well with your champion. However, after your core build is finished, which is usually 3 to 4 items, you're going to have 2 slots for situational items, and these items are going to be extremely important because these items are going to be changing the difference in your damage or the amount that you can sustain. So it's important to know what items are included in your build and why. Each item that is in your build is there for a purpose, and if that purpose isn't needed, for example, they have no healing, then anti-heal will not be needed and you won't need to build certain items. That's why it's important to know why each item is in your build, and then if there's a better substitute for that item. For example, if the enemy team has lots of magic resist, like I already said at the start of the guide, instead of building an item like Morlanomicon, an item like Void Staff, which gives magic penetration, is going to be much more helpful. So you really need to consider which items are in your build and why they are there, and also you can find substitutes to those items that may better fulfill the role that is needed in the current situation or the current game. So if you are confused about situational items and you have no idea what items you are supposed to build on your champion, I have champion guides on my channel in which I go in depth on the build and I go in depth on situational items. I do guides on every single role in the game and all the champions. I'll leave the link to the playlist in the description down below. But again, it's going to be really important that you know which items you're going to be building and why. The next thing I want to cover is going to be boot itemization. Now, every single role in the game will buy a boot item regardless of what position they play, and they should be changing the boot and the enchant that they buy pretty often. So this is going to be another concept where itemization is going to be heavily applied, especially in higher elo. After you buy the basic boot item, you're going to be able to upgrade it into an upgraded boot item. And there are 5 different boot items that you can buy, and each one has its own strength. And you're going to be changing this up depending on what enemy team comps you face or your own strengths. So the first boot item that you can consider are going to be the Boots of Lucidity and champions that have AP or ability power, and this is going to allow their cooldowns to be reduced a ton, and it's also going to help you spam your skills a lot faster. And also, when you do buy the second boot item, you will also gain 20 movement speed, which is also really nice. The next boot item that you will consider is going to be plated steel caps, and this is going to be giving you 15 armor, and it's going to be extremely strong against AD team comps. And you see a ton of AD team comps in the current meta, especially with how the meta is going right now. There are a lot of full AD team comps, and sometimes people don't even buy this item when they're up against those types of team comps, but you are going to, and when you do buy this item, it's going to mitigate the amount of damage you take. Even if you are playing a carry role or a more squishy champion, this is still going to help you out a ton against those team comps and allow you to sustain a lot more damage. The next boot item that you can consider is going to be similar to plated steel caps, but against AP or ability power damage. And this is going to be the Mercury Treads, which will give you magic resist, and it'll give you 35% tenacity, so it's going to reduce the duration of CC or crowd controls like stuns, slows, taunts, fears, silences, blinds, and whatever else there is in Wild Rift. It's going to reduce all of those crowd control skills by 35%, which is really amazing against AD team comps or team comps that have heavy CC. The other boot items that you can consider are going to be boots of swiftness, which increase your movement speed. This item is extremely great with champions that prioritize movement speed like Singed or Teemo, who really want movement speed to be their main assets onto closing onto enemies. This also is a great item for rotation if you are a roamer, like a roaming support or a roaming mid lane assassin. Then you're going to be considering this item because it's going to help you rotate around the map a lot faster. I used to not like this item, however, if you do try it out, it is pretty good if you are snowballing. Lastly, we have the Gluttonous Greaves, and this is a great item if you need more VAP. A lot of ADCs use this item, but other champions can use it as well. Now we come to a really important section of this guide, and it's going to be the enchants. And there are a ton of different enchants that you can buy now. The most popular enchant, and the one that I see used the most, is going to be the Stasis. And the Stasis is a really iconic enchant, and it will allow you to become untargetable for 2.5 seconds, and it's really great against burst damage. If an assassin on the enemy team is snowballing and carrying like Zed or Fizz, then you're going to be buying Stasis because it's going to help you out a ton against those types of champions. However, you don't want to be building this item every single game. If there is a champion that's getting fed that's an AD champion like Jinx, and you're going to be buying Stasis, then it's not going to help you at all. In fact, it'll actually help the Jinx catch up to you and put down her traps onto you, and then you can't do anything and you get bursted down immediately. So if you aren't facing a ton of burst damage and you're facing more champions with CC, the quick silver sash is going to be a much better item against that. Not only does it only have a 60-second cooldown, but it will also remove all crowd control from you and give you a 50% move speed boost for 1.5 seconds. So this is going to be a much better item against crowd control if the enemy team has that kind of stuff, because if you're up against crowd control and you buy Stasis, as soon as you get out of Stasis, they're going to crowd control you and then you're going to die. So be sure to consider that as an option. Also, the other options that you can go for boot items are going to be the Locket enchant, and you see a lot of support players build this. This is great against team comps that want to dive you. It will give you a team shield. Another item that you can consider, especially if you're a top lane without a gap closer such as Darius or Nasus, you can consider the Glory enchant, which will give you a ton of move speed when you're moving towards an enemy champion. And another item that does give you a gap closer is going to be the Proto Belt, and this item will give you a dash in a certain direction, and it's really helpful again for champions that need gap closers, or if you want to surprise your enemy with that extra dash. Another item that you can consider as a top laner or any tanky champion is going to be the Stone Plate enchant. The Stone Plate enchant is going to be increasing your health as well as reducing damage dealt, and it only has a 45-second cooldown, which means that you're going to be able to use this in almost every team fight that you encounter, and it's going to be a really great item, especially if you're the only tank on your team or you're the main frontliner or someone that needs to soak up damage. It's a great item to consider. You also have the Redemption enchant, which is kind of similar to the Locket enchant, except it's a little bit hard to use. It's going to heal your team in a certain area while dealing damage to enemy champions in that radius. Another enchant that you can consider is going to be the Shadows enchant, which is going to reveal enemy champions and slow them, which is a great enchant if you want to slow enemy champions or find your next target to assassinate. The last enchant and the most important enchant that you need to consider is going to be Teleport, especially if you're playing a top laner or a mid laner that can split push. Teleport is an amazing item. I can't understate how good this item is if you use it properly. If you split push and put pressure onto the enemy team, buying Teleport is going to allow you to join team fights right after split pushing, which is going to help your team out a ton and give you a numbers advantage in those sorts of situations. So Teleport is a great boot enchant that you should consider, and it's an item that is going to be really great with a ton of different champions, so that's also going to be something that you can consider. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys have any questions about any items or anything in general about Wild Rift, please leave it down in the comment section down below. Also, I know that I didn't cover the entire thing on itemization. There's tons of different items with so many different passives. There's a lot of nuance to all the different items. And in this guide, I didn't cover every single item in the game. However, I just wanted to give you guys a basic overview. If you guys would like a complete guide on itemization where I go over every single item in the game, that would take 1 to 2, maybe even over 2 hours. And you guys would have to watch it in like a huge video. So I'm not sure if you guys would be interested in that, but if you guys are, then leave it down in the comments below, and if I get enough requests, I will do it. But for now, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye.